What happens when a talented person is placed in an environment they completely don't understand?
Oh, that is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Right, because you take someone who is, top of their class, maybe the absolute best in their specific field,
Yeah.
and suddenly you drop them into a scenario where the rules are completely inverted. The skills that got them to the top suddenly have zero currency.
It forces us to question all of our default assumptions about success. I mean, we tend to treat talent as this universal skeleton key.
Like it just opens every door.
Exactly. The narrative you always hear is that if you possess a high IQ or a rare skill, you will naturally figure out any situation. But if we look at history or business or just human psychology, reality proves that talent is highly context dependent.
Right.
When the context shifts, talent often fractures.
And that tension is exactly what we are exploring in this deep dive today. We're looking at a really comprehensive analysis of the survival lessons and life strategies embedded in the anime and light novel series Mushoku Tensei.
Specifically focusing on the source notes covering the Demon Continent, Voyage, Reunion, and Homecoming arcs.
Yes, and we should clarify right up front. You do not need to be an anime fan to grasp this.
Oh, not at all.
We are just using this story as a framework to answer a very grounded, real-world question for you. In a rapidly changing environment, what matters more for your survival? Your raw talent or your ability to adapt?
So to set up that framework, we just need to look at the protagonist, Rudius.
Yeah.
He begins as this prodigy living a very comfortable, highly predictable life.
Right, where his magical talents are recognized and systematically rewarded.
Exactly. But a sudden phenomenon, a quote-unquote magical disaster, shatters that predictability entirely.
Yeah.
He is literally teleported across the world to the Demon Continent.
Which is the absolute definition of a hostile alien environment.
Totally. Vicious wildlife, a completely unknown language, foreign cultural norms, everything that gave him an edge, his status, his prior knowledge, his comfort, it's all erased. Right. His talent is suddenly useless because the ecosystem that supported it is gone. It's the ultimate case study in starting from zero.
And, I mean, we see this in the real world all the time, obviously minus the magical teleportation.
Yeah, thankfully.
But you see an executive who just dominates in a legacy corporation.
Right.
And then they try to join a scrappy tech startup and completely fall apart.
Or a brilliant academic tries to run a business and goes bankrupt.
Exactly. So why do these highly capable people crash so hard when the rules change?
Well, a major part of the answer lies in the danger of what the source material calls cheat tools, or, convenient shortcuts.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So there's a pivotal moment in the story where Rudius acquires a demon eye. It's a powerful tool that essentially grants him foresight. He gets the ability to see a few seconds into the future during combat.
Which sounds amazing.
Right, it is a massive advantage. But the psychological analysis of this arc explicitly warns against relying on it. It argues that leaning on this advantage is actually a trap.
Okay, see, I'm going to push back on that premise right there.
Go for it.
If you find yourself in a brutal, unforgiving environment, and you acquire a massive advantage that makes your life easier, it seems irrational not to use it.
I get that.
Why would you deliberately handicap yourself when your actual survival is on the line?
It does seem completely counterintuitive. But think about the underlying mechanics of human capability. When you rely entirely on a convenient tool or, even rely exclusively on your natural raw talent, your foundational baseline skills begin to atrophy.
Wait, like how relying heavily on a GPS system ruins your natural sense of direction.
That is the absolute perfect analogy. When you blindly follow a little blue dot on a screen, your brain literally stops building spatial awareness maps.
Because it doesn't need to.
Right. The hippocampus, which handles spatial memory, isn't being engaged, so it weakens. In the story, if Rudius relies solely on the demon eye, he stops paying attention to his opponent's footwork.
Oh.
He stops watching their breathing or the micro-expressions that telegraph an attack. He basically stops practicing his barehanded skills.
Because the tool is doing all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And true professionals know that if you become dependent on a specific tool or a specific environment that caters to your talent, you are rendered helpless the second that tool breaks or the battery dies.
Yeah, you're just left stranded.
Adaptability requires building up core competencies so that when the technology fails or the market shifts, your baseline ability to survive hasn't just vanished.
So talent, or a massive advantage, can actually become a crutch that prevents you from developing resilience.
Absolutely.
And the notes outline another blind spot of talent, which is ego.
Oh, this is a big one.
Because talent, by its very nature, usually wants to assert itself. It wants to solve the problem, win the argument, and prove it deserves to be at the top of the hierarchy.
Right, it wants the spotlight.
But sometimes asserting your capability is the most dangerous thing you can do.
Yes. The source discusses the necessity of what it calls the NPC strategy.
Yeah. The non-playable character.
Right, becoming like a non-playable character or just background scenery in a video game. This is particularly relevant when you're facing irrational hostility or street trouble.
I want to dig into the psychology of that. How does pretending to be background scenery actually protect you?
Well, in psychology, there's a concept similar to this called gray rocking.
Gray rock.
Yeah, making yourself as uninteresting as a gray rock. When you encounter an unpredictable, aggressive person, their brain is often looking for a dopamine hit through conflict.
They want a reaction from you.
Exactly. And talent, or ego, dictates that you should stand your ground, right? Outsmart them or intimidate them to prove you aren't a victim.
Because you know you can.
Right. But if you engage, you give the aggressor a hook. You validate their aggression and pull yourself into their chaotic ecosystem.
You essentially agree to play their game where the rules are completely irrational.
Precisely. True adaptability in that moment means completely shutting down your ego. You make yourself as unreactive, boring, and invisible as possible.
You offer no emotional feedback for them to latch onto.
None. And it takes immense self-control to stifle that urge to prove you are strong. But removing yourself as a target is often the only path through an irrational situation. Talent demands to fight and win. Adaptability understands the strategic value of becoming invisible.
That's fascinating. So if talent is this fragile thing that can atrophy our foundation and trap us in ego battles, how do we actively build genuine adaptability?
Right.
Because if we look at the source material, the answer seems to hinge on how we engage with unfamiliarity.
We can see this transition really clearly through the character Iris.
Okay, yeah.
So before the disaster, back in her wealthy kingdom, Iris was an abysmal student.
She just couldn't learn.
She had access to the best private tutors money could buy, yet she completely failed to learn basic reading and writing. She lacked focus and simply couldn't absorb the information.
But the moment she is thrown into the demon continent alongside Rudius, that completely flips.
It does. Her language skills suddenly skyrocket. She begins picking up foreign dialects and adapting to the complex communication styles of the local tribes.
What changes?
The mechanism behind this shift is high-stakes neuroplasticity. Back in the kingdom, learning was a purely academic exercise. Her brain, which is, an energy-conserving organ, didn't see the biological necessity of rewiring itself to memorize vocabulary flashcards.
Right, there was no real consequence if she failed.
Exactly. But on the demon continent, learning the language was an absolute necessity for physical survival. If she didn't adapt, she wouldn't eat. Necessity is the ultimate engine for unlocking potential.
And the author of the source notes includes a fantastic real-world anecdote that proves this exact point.
Oh, the English study one.
Yeah. They talk about their own experience trying to learn English in Japan. They spent 10 months grinding through textbooks, sitting at a desk, basically treating the language like an academic hurdle.
Right.
And after almost a year of that, they took the TOEIC exam and scored a 545.
Yeah. Which is a functional baseline, but nowhere near actual fluency, especially given the sheer amount of time invested.
Right. But then the author does a 1-month immersion program in Boston.
Completely different environment.
Suddenly, English isn't a subject to be studied. It's how you navigate the subway system. It's how you order food. It's how you survive your daily life. And after just 4 weeks in that high-stakes environment, their score jumped to a 620.
It's a stark demonstration of how our cognitive filters work. We are highly inefficient at learning what we casually want to know, but incredibly efficient at learning what we must know.
It's the difference between studying hydrodynamics and actually swimming.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like talent is sitting safely on the beach, reading a physics book about water displacement. You understand the theory perfectly.
Sure.
But adaptability is being pushed into the deep end of the pool. In that moment of panic, theory doesn't save you. You realize you physically have to kick your legs to stay afloat.
You have to actually do it.
Exactly. You have to place yourself in environments where you are the least skilled person in the room. If you stay on the beach reading the book, you never actually unlock the muscle memory required to survive.
That's a really great physical representation of the concept. However, When you do throw yourself into the deep end, you aren't just dealing with acquiring new physical skills.
Right.
You are forced to navigate new social ecosystems. You are going to encounter people you don't understand, some dangerous, some misunderstood. How you adapt socially is just as critical as how you adapt technically.
Which brings up the whole issue of trust. When the rules are unknown, how do you evaluate who to rely on?
The source material offers a very pointed warning about the phenomenon of saviors.
Saviors in quotes, right.
Yes. In the story, there is this deceptive, highly manipulative entity known as the man-god, but the analysis directly translates this to real-world predators, investment scammers, toxic recruiters, opportunistic manipulators.
Okay.
And the defining characteristic of these saviors is that they always seem to appear precisely when you are at your absolute lowest point.
I have to challenge this, though.
Go ahead.
If I have just lost my job, or I'm stranded in a new city with $10 in my bank account, I am drowning.
Yeah, it's a terrifying place to be.
If a recruiter reaches out, or a stranger offers a lifeline, shouldn't I take it? It's easy to say, check their motives in a theoretical discussion, but when the rent is due, you don't always have the luxury of skepticism.
It is the most natural human instinct to grab the hand reaching out in the dark.
Right.
But predators understand this profoundly. They specifically target the gaps in your heart, the exhaustion, the panic, the desperation. Taking that hand without hesitation is a failure of adaptability.
So what's the alternative?
The text advocates for what we might call the doorway defense. Even in your most desperate moments, adaptability requires the cognitive discipline to pause at the doorway and ask, why is this person offering me such favorable terms right now?
Because once you cross the doorway, the dynamic shifts.
Yeah. Exactly. Once you sit down at their table, accept their coffee, and start listening to their pitch, you have entered their playing field. Sunk cost fallacy kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
The psychological principle of reciprocity takes over. They did something nice for you, so you feel obligated to agree to their terms. It becomes infinitely harder to walk away. Adaptability means identifying the trap before you step on the trigger plate.
So hypervigilance is crucial, but, and this is interesting, the notes explore the exact opposite danger as well.
The risk of being too rigid.
Exactly. The risk of being too rigid in your judgments based on societal labels. There's a deeply feared character in the story named Ruijerd.
Right, the supered warrior.
Yeah, he is part of the supered race.
Yeah.
And because of historical events and pervasive societal rumors, his entire demographic is universally hated. He is treated as a monster by default.
He carries the ultimate negative label. Everyone just knows he's dangerous.
But Rudius adapts by making a vital distinction between secondary information and primary information.
This is such a crucial skill.
Right. Secondary information is the rumor mill. It's what everyone says about Rude. Primary information is what Rudius observes with his own two eyes.
Yeah.
He consciously discards the societal label and judges Rudyard entirely on their direct personal interactions. And by doing so, he gains a fiercely loyal protector instead of an enemy.
Which is amazing, but cognitive dissonance makes this incredibly hard to do in real life.
Well, for sure.
We hate updating our labels because admitting a label is wrong means admitting our past judgments were flawed. To illustrate how vital this is, the author of the notes shares a brilliant real-world story about playing mahjong.
Oh, I love this one. This anecdote completely reframes the concept of holding grudges.
It really does. So the author recalls a classmate from middle school who was a quintessential bully.
Like the kind who throws stuff at you in the cafeteria.
Exactly. This kid would torment quiet students, throw bread at them during lunch, and aggressively target them in physical education. Just a classic intimidating presence.
So the author has a very firm evidence-based label for this person. Bully, threat, do not engage.
Yes, the label is firmly set. Fast forward many years into adulthood. The author is a broke university student, and he ends up at a hometown gathering playing high-stakes mahjong.
And the former bully is at the table.
The former bully is at the table. The author, being inexperienced, makes a catastrophic error in the game and suddenly owes 10,000 yen. He doesn't have the money. He is visibly panicking.
And based on the old label, you expect the bully to humiliate him. That's what a bully does.
Right. But instead, the former bully, who is now employed and stable, quietly slips a 10,000 yen bill under the table to the author.
Wow.
He covers the debt with no grandstanding, no mockery, and no expectation of a favor. He just quietly rescues him.
That is wild.
Think about your own life. If you refuse to realize that people change, if you cling rigidly to outdated labels, you are going to miss out on incredibly valuable allies.
No.
True adaptability requires letting your present-day primary observations constantly overwrite your past prejudices.
And that requires a massive willingness to admit when you are wrong. And that leads directly into how an adaptable person handles failure. Because if you are jumping into the unknown, questioning saviors, and updating your biases, you're inevitably going to make mistakes.
It's guaranteed.
So how does adaptability process failure without collapsing into despair?
The source outlines a deeply analytical approach it calls the debugging mindset.
Debugging, like in software.
Exactly. It's based on the PDCA cycle plan, do, check, act. It's a mechanism for separating ego from outcome. When Rudius fails, he doesn't spiral into self-loathing. He doesn't look in the mirror and say, I am a failure.
He separates his identity from the action.
Precisely. He treats the mistake exactly like a software engineer debugging a line of code. It is an objective, emotionless audit. Okay, the plan didn't execute properly. What was the specific variable that caused the crash?
Right.
How do I rewrite the process so it doesn't crash tomorrow? It's a mechanical isolation of the problem. This protects his ego from taking a direct hit, allowing him to focus entirely on the check and act phases of the cycle.
And that ties into the philosophy of forward progressism.
Yes.
The text paints this visceral image. It is infinitely better to fail, fall flat on your face, and literally crawl forward through the mud than to stand perfectly still out of the fear of looking foolish.
Because standing still gets you killed.
Right. Perfectionism is essentially the opposite of adaptability. If you wait until you have the perfect plan to move, the environment will have already changed and you'll be left behind.
But crawling through the mud is emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
It requires a specific emotional skill set to endure that constant friction without burning out.
Which is where the character Iris models something incredibly practical. Emotional switching.
I love this concept.
Right. When a plan blows up or she faces a massive setback, she doesn't pretend she isn't angry. She allows herself to pout, but she puts a strict time limit on it, usually about 10 minutes.
10 minutes and then it's done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She processes the frustration, flushes the cortisol out of her system, and then completely resets to focus on the next immediate task.
She prevents the emotional hangover of step 1 from poisoning the decision-making of step 2.
And we can literally apply this today. Set a timer on your phone. If you bomb a presentation or make a terrible call, set an alarm for 10 minutes. Be as furious or miserable as you want. Wallow in it.
Throw a pity party.
Yes, throw a pity party. But the second that alarm rings, the party is over. You debug the code, you figure out the variable, and you crawl forward.
That is a phenomenal tool. But, it's important to acknowledge that adaptability isn't just an individual pursuit.
True.
We don't survive changing worlds entirely in a vacuum. We have to navigate our relationships. So how does adaptability function when it clashes with leadership and family dynamics?
Well, this is where the emotional core of the source material really hits hard. There's a sequence where Rudius finally reunites with his father, Paul, after years of being separated by the disaster.
Yeah.
They have both endured unimaginable trauma, and they both completely botched the reunion. It escalates into a bitter, resentful argument.
And Rudius, leaning into his prodigious intellect, attempts to use his talent to win.
Which is exactly what you shouldn't do.
Right. He systematically deconstructs his father's arguments, using logic as a weapon to prove he is right and his father is wrong.
But the text drops a profound truth bomb here about the limits of being right. It essentially argues that your flawless logical arguments only matter if the other person remains in your life afterward.
Wow.
Yeah. Beating someone in an argument is a catastrophic failure if you destroy the relationship to secure the victory.
It's a Pyrrhic victory.
Exactly. Adaptability in relationships means recognizing that the survival of the bond is far more critical than satisfying your ego's need to be correct.
It's the realization that talent might win the debate, but adaptability sustains the alliance. You have to possess the emotional intelligence to absorb some unfairness, to swallow your pride in order to keep the team intact.
Speaking of pride, there is one final real-world anecdote from the author that perfectly illustrates how talent can actually destroy leadership.
Oh, the video game story.
Yes. The author remembers being a teenager and watching his much younger brother struggling to beat a boss in the video game Dragon Ball Sparking.
Classic game.
Right. So the little brother is dying repeatedly, getting incredibly frustrated. The author, possessing superior gaming talent and wanting to help, simply grabs the controller out of his brother's hands and effortlessly defeats the boss for him.
Assuming, of course, that the younger brother would be thrilled.
Exactly. But instead of celebrating, the younger brother goes completely silent, unplugs the console, and walks outside.
Oh.
The author didn't help him. He humiliated him. He crushed his brother's pride.
Yeah.
By using his talent to eliminate the struggle, he stole the psychological reward of the victory. Adaptable leaders understand this implicitly. They don't swoop in to show off their competence. They fight alongside their team in the mud, preserving their team's dignity and allowing them to earn their own wins.
Because the moment you strip away a person's agency and pride, you lose their engagement entirely.
Absolutely.
But we have to acknowledge the toll this takes. Constantly suppressing your ego, debugging your failures without emotion, absorbing the irrationality of others, and protecting the pride of your team, it is neurologically exhausting.
Oh, for sure.
Adaptability demands a massive amount of cognitive bandwidth.
Which is why the source offers a structural necessity for anyone trying to live this way. The concept of the third place.
Yes.
Yeah.
To maintain this level of hyper-resilience, your brain requires a sanctuary, a place that is neither work nor home.
Like a specific physical location.
It can be physical or conceptual. The text advises finding a quiet spot. It doesn't need to be aesthetically pleasing or highly rated on review sites.
Doesn't have to be a fancy cafe.
Right. It just needs to be an environment where absolutely no one is demanding anything from you. When you are constantly adapting, your body is bathed in cortisol, you are in a persistent state of low-level fight or flight.
Yeah, you're constantly on edge.
Exactly. The third place acts as a decompression chamber. If you do not have a designated space to vent that psychological pressure, your adaptability will eventually fracture under the strain. You cannot bend endlessly without a place to rest.
Man, that is so true. So bringing all of these threads together, we started by asking what happens when a talented person is dropped into an alien world. And the framework we've explored provides a pretty definitive answer.
Yeah, it does.
Talent is undeniably a powerful asset, but it is inherently fragile. It relies on the ecosystem remaining static.
Which never happens.
Right. Adaptability is the willingness to put away your cheat codes so your foundational skills don't atrophy. It's the discipline to gray rock irrational threats, to learn through the panic of necessity, to update your prejudices, and to prioritize relationships over being right. That is the engine of long-term survival.
It is the endurance of friction. Talent is the sprint, adaptability is the marathon.
Which perfectly sets up the core lesson from all these sources. If you take away nothing else from this deep dive, remember this quote: talent may open a door, but adaptability determines whether you can survive once you walk through it.
It is a brilliant encapsulation, but, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat heavier thought to chew on. This builds on the very end of the source notes, where, after all this immense growth, Rudius ultimately finds himself having to walk forward completely alone.
Okay.
Think about the mechanics we've discussed. If our ability to adapt is largely shaped by the harsh environments we face and the people we rely on to survive, what happens to our identity when we become so adaptable that we finally outgrow the very people who helped us get there?
Now,
When the journey ends, who are you in the quiet?
that is a profound question to end on. If you adapt to everything, what is left to the original you? Thank you for joining us on this exploration. Keep questioning your labels, keep crawling through the mud, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.